not to go along with the abortion, don't do it. My son has been so much joy to me, and it's like, when I look at him, I just can't believe that I was gonna kill somebody so precious that's a whole generation of me. And I am so thankful to that nurse for giving me the opportunity to change my mind and have my baby, and it's been such a joy. There's days that I just lay in bed and watch him sleep. I'm so happy to have him, so if you have the opportunity, don't kill your baby. Have your baby. It's hard, but have your baby. It'll mean everything to you. Don't kill your baby. Have your baby. Sorry.
Is that great? By the way, that kind of, thank you. And that kind of stuff happened all the time on set of the movie. And in fact, these, you know that thing, I make this joke, because I think anytime you can make a joke in a situation like this is possibly worth pursuing. But you know that thing, that joke of, if you're like an oncologist, and you go out to dinner parties and people say, what are you doing? You say you're an oncologist, and everyone goes, what do you think of that? Right? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I've become that person where I meet people and they hear what I do, and then people all have the story. Everywhere. I just spoke 2 weeks ago in Newport Harbor, in Newport Beach in California, and a very nice group, and at the end, the waitress said, please don't leave without talking to me. And the minute I saw her coming, I thought, oh God, here we go. And I never know what to say to people. I really do not know what to say to people. But I don't know what to say to people. I said to her, I said, if you're religious, you should go and try and find a pastor to talk to, or try and get, some counselling. But it's, but you could see it in her face. I could see her coming. She just looked like just a very specific look. And also when we were filming the movie in Oklahoma City, I was asked to speak at a church. And I went into this church, there was like 600 people there, I don't know, a pretty cool church. And there was one woman, and I had her spotted from the minute I went in. And, at the end, people came up and talked, and then she stayed to the side, and she said, she worked for Hearn in Boulder. Do you know who that is? She worked for Hearn in Boulder, Colorado for 20 years. Her name is Julie Wilkinson. She's a wonderful person. She's had a conversion experience. But you could spot her in a crowd. Anyone would spot her in a crowd. You could pick, I promise you, no one in this room couldn't spot her in a crowd. It's extraordinary, just extraordinary. But she's a wonderful person, and has been, and she told me a story that I thought was extraordinary. She said the story that struck everyone in that clinic in Boulder, the one that stopped everyone in their tracks, was a happily married couple, in love couple, pregnant, healthy, the baby was healthy, healthy, everything was healthy, and they were pregnant with twins. And they came to that clinic and said, oh, and she really remembered it. We researched it, we've looked it up and everything, and we've talked to our friends. And in my head I'm thinking, friends? What kind of people do you know? It just wouldn't suit us. That whole twin thing wouldn't suit us. So they aborted healthy twins. And she said that was the one that struck, that made everyone. One of the parts of this story that, as I've worked through, researching the story, speaking to the cops, CSI, looking at all the photographs, looking at all the evidence, the thing that really struck me, and it's very clear in the book, is the banality of evil. That phrase from Hannah Arendt, isn't it, from the woman who was at the Nuremberg trials, who talked about the banality of what happened at the camps. And there was a banality of what happened at Gosnell's clinic. Like, they were joking around. There was a lot of joking around going on. Like, people were having a really good time. And greed is a really big part, I think, of the abortion industry. I'm new to all this, so it's just something I've picked up on. So he gave tips. There were tips for each abortion that everyone got in cash. So late-term abortions, everyone got like either $20 or $30. So Steve Massoff got $30, and the rest of the staff got $20. And so, at the end of the week, people had like, hundreds of dollars, maybe $1,000 in cash, and they liked that. And as I said, these are people who could never get employed anywhere, ever. So, there was a kind of but the banality of it is amazing to me. And every time I tried to kind of come up with anything that I could compare it with, the only thing I could ever come up with was the Holocaust. And I don't know if any of you have read the Dietrich Bonhoeffer book, which is like the best book I've read I can't remember when. It's not an easy read for those. I studied theology, but it's a tough read, but it's an amazing book. But I think it's funny. This is a quote that's ascribed to him, and then I'm not 100% sure if it really is him. But silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. And the reason I set that quote up is because, again, as I said earlier, Gosnell is not my problem in my head. Actually, I don't really. I get him. I get it. But here's what I don't get. I don't get Governor Tom Ridge of Pennsylvania, a Republican. Oh, sorry. Who was elected on a pro-choice, on a moderate Republican, moderate. God, I hate the word moderate, anything. Moderate. And what he decided to do once he got into office was to tell the Department of Health to no longer inspect abortion clinics. And that culture then persisted after he left, that culture of them not inspecting abortion clinics, doing regular inspections. By the way, he did not say don't inspect if somebody dies. That one they came up with all on their own. So he is not, his hands are in here, significantly, Tom Ridge. And by the way, he's been super quiet. Everywhere I go, people say, what's he said? Nothing is what he said. The Department of Health, I can never say enough about them. They're despicable. The Department of State, the Philadelphia Department of Health, the Philadelphia Department of Sanitation, the Philadelphia Hospitals, Doctors, School of Nursing, National Abortion Federation. You won't believe this. I just find this stuff so bizarre. So the Jefferson School of Nursing in Philadelphia sent nurses there to do whatever you call it, internship type thing, right? And I wrote to the Jefferson School of Nursing, which by the way is in receipt of public funds, and they refused. Every one of these departments, by the way, not one of them would answer my questions. And they were really proud of it too. One of them, in fact, I think it was the Department of Health said, and by the way, you can try to appeal this, but you'll never win. They wrote that to me. This is how despicable, so has the culture changed? Not even slightly. The Department of Sanitation, by the way, there was a very good Department of Sanitation worker who I highlight and name in the book, who went in there, saw things, and she got into her car, and before she even got to the office, she phoned her supervisor and the head of the department and said to them, this is crazy. And they did nothing. And she did that twice. And she wrote, but loads of people did things. There were lots of people who did things. But by the way, the hospitals in the area were constantly getting people arriving in horrific states out of this clinic. I mean, I highlight one of the worst stories that I thought, one of them, the word worst becomes very relative very quickly when you're reading this book. But there was one girl who went for an abortion, and she came with her cousins. You talk about banal, check out how banal this is. And the cousins went across the road to have a pizza while she was having the abortion. And then time and time went on, and still she wasn't coming out, and they were getting worried. And so they went, and they knocked on the door, and the door was locked, and they couldn't get in. Some of you who've read the book know this story. I see a nodding there. So then, they eventually couldn't get in, and eventually the cousins started saying, if you don't let us in, we're going to call the cops. They got in then. Gosnell comes forward, they see the cousin is on a lazy boy chair. This is where he kept them in the outpatients. In the lazy boy chair, the chair is covered in blood, the floor is covered in blood, there's other people in all kinds of states. She's all drugged up and everything. And he says, didn't go that well, we didn't get it all. And then he goes in the back, and he brings forward a container with the bits they got. And hands it to these cousins who just had their pizza, and they then went to the hospital with the container. Now, isn't it amazing that didn't make the newspapers? At the time, that the administration of the hospital, of the local hospital, didn't, so this is, and if that can happen, like people say, oh, he's an outlier, Gosnell's an outlier, oh, shut up. Don't be stupid. I mean, that's stupid. That's not rational. It doesn't make any rational sense. How can it be rational that he's an outlier if proper doctors, proper hospitals ignored this? You think they're not ignoring stuff in other parts of the country because of their ideology? Absolutely, for sure. So Jim Wood is the guy who eventually caught up with it. The only reason that Gosnell was caught, by the way, he was caught because of greed. Because it wasn't enough for him to be doing the abortions. He was also selling Oxycontin, you know, this opioid thing or whatever. So he was selling Oxycontin, which, by the way, and you young people, do not take Oxycontin. And whatever you do not mix it with cough syrup. Apparently it's heroin. Do not do that, because life is beautiful and too short. But anyway, he was selling that stuff and making a fortune out of that. That's how he got caught. Jim Wood was following a narcotics lead. That's how he ever found out about this. And then he became obsessed with carnamine monger, and because of carnamine monger, they got the search warrant. He was allowed to look for more stuff than just the narcotics. And that's when they started finding the body parts in the clinic. And he teamed up with two other guys. And this is where it gets good, you know, with Steve Dougherty and Jason Huff, the FBI and the DEA, you know, and for all the things, you know, when you think about people and the disgraceful way that the cops are being described in this country at the moment, I'll tell you one thing, my experience with the cops in this case is just nothing short of just beyond admirable. And Jim Wood is an extraordinary person, and he's fantastic. You do know that at the same time that Gosnell was on trial, Jodi Arias was also on trial. Jodi Arias is the girl who murdered, you know, remember she murdered the boyfriend in the shower, and there was all this sort of kinky sex stuff and all that. So we all know all about it. So it went on and on and on and on, and everyone in the country knows who Jodi Arias is. No one, to this day, people don't know who Gosnell is. And we're going to change that. I can tell you one thing, I'm certainly going to change that. So one of the things I like to say is what we don't know really can hurt us. So what's bizarre to me, and it's something that I do say to all the pro-life groups that I go to speak to around the country, is you need to let people in Kentucky know what the law in Kentucky is. You need to let people in Pennsylvania know what the law in Pennsylvania is. So here are the two ADAs on the case, Joanne Pescatori and Christine Wexler. These are not regular women. These are super smart girls. These are very smart women. Both of them are mothers, and neither of them knew what the law on abortion was in Pennsylvania. So that's how clever Planned Parenthood is. I think that's really clever of them, by the way, to make sure nobody knows what the law is. Because guess what happens when people find out what the law in their own state is? They don't like it. Even progressives don't know the law. I have had a stand-up row with a woman who used to work, anyway, she worked in the White House at one stage for a Democrat. And she's from Pennsylvania. She's very, very informed, very, very smart woman. I mean, I had a stand-up row with her where she told me I was wrong about the abortion law in Pennsylvania, which is 6 months, which is 24 weeks. She said, no, it's three months, or what? It's one trimester. I'm going, you know, people don't know. I think one of the best things any pro-life group could do is put up billboards and just tell people the law. Just don't even put a spin on it. This is where you live. You live in this place. In Oregon, you know, they should really put it up in Oregon and in New Mexico. You can have an abortion at 9 months here. You like it? You like that? People don't like it. The jury didn't like it. The jury didn't like it when they heard it. And the jury certainly didn't like it when they heard what abortion was. And that's one of the other gifts of this case. Because the jury had to have good abortion explained to them so that they could make a distinction between that and murder. So they had good abortionists come and explain what a good abortion looks like. And the jury were disgusted. So we came across this story very much by accident. My husband the last thing we had done prior to this was a documentary by fracking called Frack Nation, which is fabulous, and it's available on Netflix. And he was traveling around Pennsylvania, happened to be in Philadelphia, went to the court, and heard this incredible testimony. Came back, myself and Magda, the other partner in the business, did not want anything to do with this. We didn't want anything to do with abortion. And he said, will you read the transcripts of the trial for the days that I was there? And we did, and that was that. And then we all wanted to do it. So we decided to do a crowdfunding campaign, as was mentioned earlier. And we asked for $2.1 million, which is complete madness. And was a complete nightmare. Because after we started the campaign, which was like whatever, so that, I don't know how many days have passed, and we had 45 days left, and we had $42,000. But by the way, $42,000 wasn't a bad start. We started to realize, oh my God, we need $47,700 a day, or we're going to fall behind. I mean, like, complete nightmare. And then unbelievable things happened. Like, there's a whole book in what happened. Brilliant things happened. How much time have I got? I can really, so that I just really understand how much, if I can.
11:12.
And I have to stop at?
At 11:45.
Oh, it's great. It's all good. I mean, one of the very funny stories that happened that I really liked was, you can imagine, the worst thing about this was we did fixed funding. If we had raised $2 million, we'd have raised nothing. Do you understand? All the money would have gone back, right? That's the way it works. So it's, every day is a nightmare. Every day is like the worst day of your life. 7 days a week for 45 days. It was hell. And anyone who thinks about doing crowdfunding, be really careful that you really think, it looks easy, it's a nightmare. But anyway, one day Magda said to me, oh, this woman's trying to send, there's a woman, she's trying to send $10,000, but she's having a problem with PayPal. And I said, give me that woman's telephone number right now. So I'm on the phone to her and saying, like, we're going to have to go there and drive to Colorado and pick up the money in cash and put it in whatever myself, whatever. So whatever, and chat, and we worked it out, and the money dropped in, right? And then, like 3 days later, she phones and says, you know what we need? We need to get on the Rush Limbaugh show. And I said, yes, sister, we really do, you know, good luck with that. And then she says, yeah, but I know a guy who knows a guy who knows Mr. Schnurdley. I think we got some Rush fans here. And it's a funny story. I wrote got an email address. I wrote to James Golden, wrote to James, and kind of set out my stall. And he wrote back and said, like who are you? It's like, help me, like, who are you? I was thinking, what do I say? And I wrote back and I said, well, we made a film called Frack Nation. And then he writes back immediately, all caps, we love you. I got 15 minutes on the Rush Limbaugh show. We got about $180,000. In 1 hour. A huge amount of money came in. But stuff like that happened all the time. There's a woman in Australia who sent us $50 a month. There's people all over the world. You know, the money came from 17 countries. Most of the money came from here, Canada, and Australia. But money came from everywhere. We had money from South Korea. You know, we had money from Afghanistan. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. And there's incredible stories with people trying to help, doing whatever they can. And everyone in this room is going to give $1. That's all I want you to give me. And I'll explain why in a minute. We now have got to this stage where we're at, what's that? 2.3, right? But you see what I've circled there? It's very hard to read it. 29,526 people have given money so far. It shouldn't be that number. It should be 500,000 people have given money. Can you imagine that news story? So give $1, just $1. All you've got to do is go to gosnellmovie.com. And one of the things that's happened because of the crowdfunding is when you crowdfund, people can write to you. And we've had these unbelievable letters. Again, I'm going to have the problem with the eyesight here. Thank you both so much for doing this. I'm 52, and when I was 26, I had an abortion. I've not been able to have kids since then, and it's a decision I regret deeply. I will meet this child in heaven. I'm horrified over hearing about this clinic, and I'm so glad you're going to expose this. Thank you, and God bless you both. We've got letters like that all the time. And then I love this one. I love this. When I'm cleaning my replacement windows and a neighbour goes by, I smile and say, best money I ever spent. When at the end of my life I'm standing before God, he'll see my donation here, look me in the eye and say, best money you ever spent. My heart hurts so badly for all these innocent babies who died such horrific deaths. We will never get to see their little smiles light us up a room. I'm so incredibly heartbroken and devastated that their short lives were filled with such suffering and horror, treated like trash instead of being tenderly loved and cared for like they so much deserved. Those images will burn into my memory forever, and my tears flow like a river. Okay, I'm now going to show you the trailer of the film, which is not an official trailer. And is that recording? Is she recording? Are they recording back there?
Yes.
Okay, that has to. I'll have to wait until that's turned off. Then I can't do that. We'll do it at the end then. Okay. But I want to show you the trailer of the film. It's not the trailer I have is a commercial trailer. It's not. It's not allowed to be broadcast. Does that make sense? So trailer not happening. There you go. This is me reminding you to donate $1 at gosnellmovie.com and like the Gosnell Movie Facebook page, please. So we wrote a book, and it's a funny story as well about writing the book. We got to meet a lot of our heroes. Does anyone know who that is? We just love Eric Metaxas. Yes. Anyway, Eric Metaxas. Bill O'Reilly was really, really good to me. And you know, I know there's all these stories about him. I can tell you one thing, he was an incredible gentleman and really, really nice. And it was a very funny thing what happened with me. My mother used to talk about the hand of God, but it's very funny. What's your man called, the guy, the liberal guy that's on Fox? Juan Williams? So I'm in the green room before I go on Bill O'Reilly, and you know, it's a bit nerve-wracking and all that, and I'm sort of sitting there and I'm deciding I'm not talking to anybody, and Lou Dobbs is there and a few of the, you know, Dana Perino and that, they're all knocking around, and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm not talking to anyone. Not in a rude way, but I'm just not going to get involved in the conversation. I need to sort of focus here and get a bit centred. The next thing, Juan Williams walks in and sits off me and goes, what are you doing? What are you here for? And the girl beside me, the publicist, she said, oh, she's written this book, you know, she's written this book about gospel, you know. Oh, we know all about that. That's all been done, you know. And it was very, you know, there was sometimes you get a moment of clarity. It happens to me so rarely. But I had this really completely focused moment. And I said, you're absolutely wrong. Do you know who Samika Shaw is? You don't know who Samika Shaw is. Samika Shaw is a young African-American woman of 23 who died, who was a mother of 3, who died at that Gospels clinic, and you don't know her name. But you know who Michael Brown is? Michael Brown was a thug who walked down the middle of the street in Ferguson after assaulting an immigrant in a corner shop. And you want to put a statue up to him? And you don't know who Samika Shaw is? Yeah, no, we need this book. Yeah, we need this book. Oh, he didn't say a word. Simple. So when I went out and met Bill O'Reilly, it was really funny because I had never thought of it like that. I hadn't actually thought of that until I suddenly was confronted with Juan Williams saying, we know all this. And I'm thinking, you know what, you know nothing. But anyway, I shut him up. And we met Mark Stein, Be Still My Beating Heart. Yeah. This is what I call the thinking woman's bit of crumpet. If you know what that means. And then the most amazing thing happened. So the book came out in January, and in 3 days it sold out on every platform. It sold out in Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and in Amazon. And it went to number 3 on all the books being sold in Amazon everywhere in the United States. And then an amazing thing happens. You know that thing that immigrants say, you know, only in America? We then got an invitation to the White House. And we got to meet Mike Pence and Kellyanne Conway. And I mean, I presume, you know, Mike Pence is unbelievable. He's just unbelievable. Like, it's just, you know, you're in the White House, and it's pretty amazing to be in the White House, and then on top of that you meet Mike Pence, and he speaks, and you realize that you're in the presence of somebody, a very, very significant human being. Really a beautiful person, and his wife, so elegant and noble, and they're just, I mean, words really fail to kind of adequately describe what it feels like to hear Mike Pence speak. And he, you know how he recites 2 Chronicles or whatever, which I am not a Bible expert, you know, but, you know, if my people are, will humble themselves, and I will heal their land. He's just amazing, and he said basically that he had his children there, and he said, you know, that when, you guys will remember this, remember if the Time magazine had a picture of the baby in the womb, like way back when, and he said that his children were small then, and he said he remembered taking them out the Time magazine and sitting the kids down with the wife and saying, you know, we're going to Washington to save the babies. Like he's just great. He's just great, and his wife has been treated so appallingly by people, really disgusting people. She's just such a lady. They're just wonderful. And then meeting Kellyanne was sort of like, so 1,000 years ago I kind of had a kind of crush on Johnny Osmond. Yeah, that's how old I am, right? Honestly, meeting Kellyanne, I couldn't speak at all. Like I was like, and my husband overspoke. He was like, oh my God, did you know who I am? We made a documentary about whatever. And she's, you know, she has this incredible calm. She's just like, I know, she's so zen. And are there Catholics here? Yeah. So, do you know that she's a daily communicant? You'd never lie about that, by the way. Like anyone who's not a Catholic, just so you know, no one would lie about being a daily communicant. You just wouldn't. It's just, you just never would lie about that. She's a daily communicant. Like, how do you do that? Amazing. You know who else is a daily communicant? Mark Wahlberg. When Mark Wahlberg goes on to do movies and stuff, that's the big thing, that they have to make room for him to have mass every day. Just throwing that out. And then the book appeared in bookshops in the true crime section, which I thought was really great, because then people bought it accidentally. People who liked, people who liked crime and stuff. And my husband and I became those people, like, we'd go into shops and we'd go, because it's kind of a weird thing when you write a book. I never even thought about it before I wrote the book, that it would actually appear in bookshops. You know what I mean? I never put myself in there, and then the next thing we went to a bookshop and it's there. The other thing that was the trick thing to do, if you ever write a book, very good idea, and we did it. Every time we went to an airport, you know the way they have like Hudson recommends? We always went. And my husband used to do that and put it on the Hudson recommends table and then just walk away, take a photograph. He did it like 10 times. He got caught once by the girl who's going. And there's a funny story. Like, so we sold an enormous number of books, and so we knew them within 3 days. We thought, oh, you know what? We're going to be New York Times bestsellers. How great is that? And then they didn't put us on the list. So here's news for you, for those of you who are following fake news. Fake news. So the New York Times do not the New York Times do not make up their New York Times bestseller list based on numbers. Isn't that hilarious? So they don't use numbers. Now, obviously, 30 years ago, you can understand they had to make phone calls and stuff and try and make some decision, right? Nowadays, it's all available. So, for example, on Amazon, if you have a book on Amazon, you can look, and some of us do this quite obsessively. You can look and see what number your book is at. Your book is ranked all the time on Amazon. There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, in some ways it's good, in some ways it's distressing, because you go up and down and whatever. So, there was no difficulty with them knowing that our book was a bestseller in the United States, but they decided, because they have a committee, they sit down and they curate the list, because they're the New York Times. But anyway, they were shamed into it, and then we were on the list subsequently. But, this is who we're up against, One of the amazing things about doing this, as I said, doing this story, has been the people that we've met. So, Gosnell kept the feet of babies, I told you that. So he severed the feet and kept them in jars, which is kind of a serial killer thing. And then he put the names on the jars. So, as you can imagine, so the cops, what are they going to do with this, right? So the cops got in touch with people whose names appeared. And they got in touch with one girl, and she's on the Facebook page, she writes to us. They got in touch with this one girl whose baby's 2 feet were kept in a jar, and they obviously went to her house. I mean, they didn't talk to her on the phone. They went to her house and said this. And since then, the baby's feet have been buried. But the grandmother of that baby, because of course there's grandmother of these children, that grandmother is very much in touch with me. And so she appears in the book. I don't give her full name, but she appears in the book. And here's one of the letters she wrote to me. And it's funny how the Lord puts people in our lives and makes this beautiful tapestry that will slowly be revealed. I feel like I already know the team you work with, and I'm connected in a soul tie that will remain eternal. If I never meet any of you in this lifetime, I'm sure we will recognize one another in glory. Please thank everyone for the tireless work and dedication to bring the voice of these precious souls. May our God richly bless you. I will stay in touch. And she, so basically it was her son was the father of this child, and the girlfriend lied and said she'd had a miscarriage, but this woman knew, she just knew. And she's one of the people who petitioned for the babies, for their, for the babies, because 47 bodies were found on the premises, including the feet, but there were 47 full bodies found when they raided the premises, because he had stopped paying for his, for the medical waste to be taken away, medical waste, But, and those babies, so those babies have been buried, and there has been prayers said over them, and there will be a permanent memorial created. The last chapter in the book deals with that, and deals with the words that were spoken there, some of which are just unbelievable, beautiful things were said over the children. By the way, the other thing that's at the back of the book is, I told you we meet Gosnell. He writes to us all the time. He writes poetry. I've included some of the poetry at the end of the book. He writes poetry celebrating abortion. And he also has sent us big long quotations from the Bible that justify abortion. This is just, there's a really great quote here. The Alliance Defending Freedom attorney Catherine Glenn Foster acknowledged that in the end, Philadelphia officials had fulfilled the wishes of all who wished to pay their respects to the babies. Today we can say that the city of Philadelphia has heard us. They gave us these babies a place to be buried, she said. The babies were like any other precious little persons. How a person dies doesn't make anyone less human. Try as hard as he might, neither their killer nor his infamy could erase these babies' humanity. We will use this sacred space to cry, to remember, and to say, this ends here. And then, yeah, I love this last bit. This is the very last paragraph of the book. This is how much I loved this paragraph. The Reverend Patrick McElhinney, director of the Washington, D.C.-based Christian Defense Coalition, said at the memorial, I would simply say this to the medical examiner and the Philadelphia city government. So they had asked and petitioned for the bodies for a long time and were not given them. And then the bodies were buried secretly. And then they were told afterwards where the burial was. These children were not unclaimed. We came for months after months seeking these children in love. They were not unclaimed, they were wanted, they were desired, they had meaning and purpose. It's a sentiment we share. It's the last line of the book. And I'm going to just quickly say this, because this is one thing I want to look at, the culture of death, just very, very briefly. Have you seen this documentary? This is the After Tiller documentary, where late-term abortionists are basically treated like Mother Teresa. And this is the other one. These are just things that strike me, as I said, new to this movement and new to these ideas. Cecile Richards, to me, this is amazing to me, you know. So Cecile Richards, gave an interview where she described the fact that she had an abortion herself after having 3 children. It was a personal decision, and we have 3 children. We adore, and they're the center of my life, and we decided that that was as big as our family needed to be. That was really the story. It wasn't anything more dramatic than that. She earns $1 million a year. And Chelsea Clinton, do you remember what she said? She said she left her church when she was it 6? Yeah. She left her church when she was 6 because they were against abortion. Isn't she just the loveliest little 6-year-old you ever knew? And when I talk about the culture, they made this film called Obvious Child. It's a romantic comedy about abortion. It was the actress, who's Jenny Slate, who's a kind of comedian or whatever. Every late night talk show host had her on. They couldn't have given this film more publicity, and it bombed. And you know about this scandal, right? There's a scandal, is that what it's called? I haven't seen it. They had this TV show that's on like ABC, one of the networks, where they have this, she's having her abortion, Kerry Washington, and they played Silent Night as the music in the background. They really know how to do stuff. And then I put this on when I knew Wesley was going to be here. I don't know if Wesley mentioned this earlier, but this drives me completely nuts. So, I talked to you about, my mother used to talk about the hand of God. It's so weird. So I was so sick of this story, of this gospel story, like so sick of it, that I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to listen to a novel on tape, just to get myself away from it. And I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll read a love story. And this is like a big love story. You Before Me, it's called, right? So I'm there with the tape. And it's great. It's a great love story. It's great. The guy's quadriplegic. He meets this really cool girl and everything, right? So it's great. And I'm listening to this and walking around, hiking around the hills in Hollywood. And it's like this. And it's like, oh, that's nice. Oh, that's really nice. And she's real unusual, and she dresses funny and everything. And he just can't get over it. And suddenly his life has meaning and everything. And then here's my face. He then asks her, like, just